Oh, you are muted.
Yeah, so I said good afternoon, and it's pretty chilly here in Des Moines, Iowa this afternoon. Where are you
Yeah.
located?
I'm in Spokane, so I'm on Pacific time, but it's been cold here. It is 25 right now. It was 3 this morning.
Wow, that is cold for Spokane, huh?
Yeah.
So I've been looking forward to this conversation. I have no idea exactly what you want to talk about, but so I take it that what does this go for an hour, or how long do we?
Yeah, it will be an hour. A couple people have said that they're going to be here, and sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't.
Okay, all right.
So we'll see if people show up. And one of the things that happened today is Robert, who said he would be here, and he's usually pretty good, he submitted a video of, I guess it's the Hopi prophecy, but it's different than I've ever heard it, and it's talking about prophecies that Native peoples have carried for centuries about how the growth of the planet is going to go over time. And that is really, truly interesting. I've put it in under Indigenous wisdom. So there's now an article with a link to that. He gave me the link, so I put it there in an article. But what I was hoping you would talk about, because you'd mentioned it at, I don't know, in some meeting we were at, that you were working with the Lakota people around their understanding, their contract with life, I guess I want to say. Does that make sense to you?
Keep talking. Not yet, but
Okay. What I understood at the time was that there was uh, a prophecy, a contract, a way that the Lakota people had outlined their relationship to animals and the planet, other people, and life. So if that's not triggering anything, then it was my misunderstanding.
well, let me just check in here with kind of uh, giving your listeners or people that join this conversation in the future a little background as to who I am. Um,
Yes.
so I'm 71 years old, and I am German. My mother was 100% German, and my on my father's side, I come from the Scott Irish Burns clan, and so my Celtic background is something that I would say resonates with the Lakota. I don't have any Lakota or American Indian blood. I've been participating with specifically the Lakota at Pine Ridge Reservation since March of 2000. And
Okay.
my first visit there was in 2004. And then in 2007, professionally got involved. Um, my background professionally is in cognitive science. And I've done some large projects in regards to human stress research um, with Burlington Northern Railroad back started in 1984. And then my last project was redesigning large losses in the insurance industry uh, that started in about 1997. And that got interrupted. It was the pilot project was in Denver, Colorado. And I ended up in 6 years of litigation suing American Family Insurance Company and a mid-sized law firm in Denver. And I didn't know that I've always stayed away from lawyers for the most part, but they really are some evil animals, is what I would say. The lawyers and the politicians. And my business loss was $280 million, and I settled without any confidentiality to any parties. and by that time, I had become involved with the Lakota Oyate people. Oyate means people in their language, and compared to the breakdowns that I experienced in business as usual in America, I really perceived that the Lakota, uh, the Lakota historically are the last tribe out of the 577 tribes in America today that is still in a political standoff with the federal government.
Mm.
And Pine Ridge Reservation has been in global news since 1890 when the Wounded Knee Massacre happened, and the Seventh Cavalry took revenge over what happened at Little Bighorn when the Seventh Cavalry attacked the Lakota people, and of course they won that battle and killed General Custer. So you know, since 2007, I've been involved with what I would say the Great Eagle Society, which is about 50 plus years old, and it's made up of the traditional Lakota speaking grandparents and medicine men and of their 7 tribes, 7 tribal councils, the Ocheti Chakawin, and so my Lakota mother since 2007 was Uncha Marie Randall, who passed away on September the 18th of 2021 from COVID, and so it was like being invited to a great feast in my life, and most of those gray eagles that I'm pointing to have passed on to taking their journey to the Camp of North, and I have a lot more faith in the unseen world today than having any faith in this 3D nightmare that we're in presently, and so my friends on the outside are since 1984 for me. I've been very involved in the emerging cognitive science, biological revelations that are occurring, specifically in autopoiesis and cognition, realization of living by Humberto Maturana and Francisco Varela. And then the communicative competency jurisprudence of Terry Weinergrad at Stanford and Fernando Flores. And then recently, I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, from 2015 to 2018, with my father at the United States Soldiers Home. We were the only father and son there. And I ran into and became friends with Professor Scott Kelso, a cognitive scientist, who we're actually relatives. Both of us belong to the Scott Irish Burns clan, and but Scott created was at Yale and went down to Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida, and has done brain research. And his discoveries are really the most fascinating, uh, and they resonate with the Lakota. Uh, you know, uh, one of the things that he's demonstrated in the coordination dynamics, the complementary nature. In other words, you have a left and right lobe of the brain, you and I, you know, and the amount of coordination that's going on right now, right in this very moment, for us to have a conversation and to be formulating words and to be discussing what we're discussing in the outside world, it's a phenomenon. The trillions of neurons that are operating for that to take place, and one of the things that he discovered was that they've proven is in a 4-month-old infant, and being able to actually see the origin of agency in a 4-month-old in a crib, where they tie a ribbon to the foot of the baby to a mobile device above the crib. And they were able to see how that infant realizes that they have the power to move the surrounding world. So, so there's so it's called coordination dynamics. It's being heralded as a new scientific paradigm that can help us break out of, you know, the Cartesian uh, classical mechanics that we're kind of harnessed into, as well as our quantum theories, and what the Lakota bring to the conversation or to the party is an ancient wisdom continuum, 10,000 plus years old, in oral language that is basically about action and connection within the web of life and the surrounding universe, where there's not the psychological split that is in Western civilization.
Right.
You know, the real problem that we're facing in Western civilization is the split between the creator and the creation.
Right.
There is no split. In reality, it's like we've created a civilization where there's this mistaken observer error and the swept along evolutionary drift. And we have now entered this really sixth extinction. And today, what we're observing taking place in Ukraine is very serious, because you have a small subsystem on the planet, Russia, you know, that literally does about $2 trillion in production in the system per year, that is trying to take over the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that, I would say, as well, in a number of other different domains and areas that you could look at, where a small minority, through arrogance and aggression, are attempting to take over the system. And so the institutional, bureaucratic systems are failing, and yet, as human beings, you know, we are these. We have a sixth squiggling sense beyond the 5 senses that is a dynamic metastability that doesn't live in polarization of either or. It is an inclusive middle. So our ancestors, for at least 3 million years, were born and arose in the tree of life as the biology of love. They had legitimacy in coexistence with the niches that surrounded them. They were not at war with the web of life. They were actually engaged, and they had legitimacy in coexistence with the air, the water, the birds, the grasses, stars, and so on. So that, in a nutshell, is what I would say is where I am today, and how the Lakota are these ancient people that are in literally the center of the breadbasket in America, and have uh, had a historical role in this new country that is only a few hundred years old, but actually are retaining a very ancient wisdom continuum that has a lot of relevance in what Scott Kelso would call, a new Earth-centric educational paradigm that needs to come into the world. So,
Well, and I certainly think at least there are certain segments of our society that are truly working at that, are trying to understand how to be more earth-centric and what that looks like, and are starting to listen to indigenous peoples who have been and who have maintained some of that wisdom. So are there things in your experience that the Lakota have kept that would be useful for us to think about, or to mimic, or to integrate in what we do?
well, what I would say is that that what they offer to Western civilization is um, an entirely old slash new mindset, where in their oral language they don't have a word for animal. They don't have a word for goodbye. They don't have a word. They don't have words for profanity. So if you can imagine an ancient lifeway, based in person to person social interactions in this manner that they call wo Lakota, which is peace and friendship and harmony and social relations with one another, where you actually validate one another's niche as legitimate in coexistence with oneself. But that's not just true in terms of human relations, cradle to cradle and generation to generation. That's how they approach the entire web of life. So whether you're talking about the water, whether you're talking about the grasses, whether you're talking about the air, whether you're talking about the stars, whether you're talking about the two-legged, the four-legged, the birds, the fish, these are all niches, living niches that are part of 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 a mindset where there's no separation, where there's communication, where there's respect and dignity for them as as like a brother and sister, as the trees in the Lakota view of the world that we could create together. The trees would be counted as in the senses of the planet as our sisters, So yeah, and so it's a eco literacy, uh, and it's not that each of the 577 tribes in the United States have at their root, you know, what I would say a native science that was very powerful prior to, the papal bulls uh, codex of 1502, where, the creation of poverty and domination and appropriation took place from Western civilization and the creation of colonies and slavery and everything that's happened. But prior to that, the Americas were actually in a very good um, eco-literacy for a long period of time. They were not suffering from from debtor prisons and uh, the horrible conditions that were in Europe at the time. You know, the Americas were actually functioning pretty well. It doesn't mean that they didn't have battles, they didn't have skirmishes and fights with each other, but they were minor compared to anything going on in Europe and
Right.
Western civilization. So,
I,
I
I,
think that's what they offer us is the connection to ourselves. Like for me, it helps me connect to my ancient hidden Ireland. My Scottish, uh, Irish heritage and ancestry. And then what I would say about modernity is kind of it almost doesn't have a snowball chance in hell of surviving come hell or high water at this point. So something new has got to be born here.
right. Right. I'm intrigued when you said they didn't have a word for goodbye. Can you talk about why that's true? What the
Yeah, it's like so if you're going to learn about a culture, I mean, really know what a culture, uh, how it operates, in generations over time. One place that you can be observant is how they bury each other. And so it is a phenomenal experience to go to a Lakota uh, funeral ceremony that lasts about 3 days, and no matter what the pain, suffering, the breakdowns that were going on in that individual's life, uh, there is no goodbye, and they really are very conscious of, as a community, of coming together uh, in prayer and singing and songs and eating. That whenever you're around the Lakota, you're going to be eating a lot. They like eating together, and they're they carry that linkage to what I would say the spirit journey to the camp up north. They know where they're going, and it doesn't matter if they committed suicide. It doesn't matter if they were drunks. It doesn't matter what the pain and suffering was in this 3D dimension. The community lifts them up into the 4D and to the true camp up north. So on a day-to-day basis inside of the Lakota world, when you're with colas, which is friends, when you're with your friends or family, um, they say, "Hey, Doksha," which means later. See you later. They never use the word goodbye, and so just that alone, if you could, and actively embody that, where
right.
yeah, you're starting to uh, experience, this eternity that you live in, inside of the what I would say there's spatial reasoning that you and I are in right now, right? So it's all of a sudden like, you know, we probably know you and I have probably known each other in the past somewhere, and um, and are heading in the same direction.
Yes.
That's why we're in conversation. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the shortcomings of not understanding reincarnation, is that it makes it narrows our focus so tiny instead of expanding it and really including all of our experience. It makes such a difference. You really see things in a different perspective when you understand that there is that continuum.
yeah.
So the other thing you mentioned was no animal. And one of the, I'm forgetting the connection that I made with that, but there's, well, I guess animate and inanimate is English is a language that sort of solidifies the animate and inanimate, lots of its and lots of separation. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that they don't have a word for animal, and I was wondering if that was connected. How do they, what sort of dichotomies do they understand as being real and work with?
What I would say is that everything's animate. Rocks,
Right.
there's nothing that's not animated. Even the unseen world, that you the spirit world is animated. So they don't have the split between animate and inanimate. Uh, they have a direct spatial reasoning with their encounter in living, in realization of living. I mean, like, so it's a real tacit, uh, they don't feel separated from the stars. I mean, just think of that. I mean, what we've discovered recently about stars, and if you get into their star knowledge, they see themselves as star people coming from the Pleiades, Seven Sisters. So their creation story is a very robust and rigorous, grounded story of coming out of the earth and yet connected to the stars. And so their animation is not fantasy either, though. Where I would say a lot of our animation in modernity is, built on consuming and fashions, and um, I have a hard time even understanding it anymore. I've watched a few movies recently where at the end of the movie I didn't even understand what the movie was even about. And then you have a movie come along like Don't Look Up,
Yeah.
and it just knocks you right off your chair with the potency and the animate uh, presentation that's done in that movie is really a phenomenon, in regards to where we're situated as human beings right now, and completely
Very true.
ignoring climate change. I mean,
Yeah.
this is like a shark about to eat the whole situation.
Can you
Whereas with
remember?
what I would say with the Lakota, they're not really, whatever happens, Mother Earth, or what they call Uncha Maka. This isn't Gaia, coming from the Greeks. Uncha Maka to them is Grandmother Earth, the womb of all creation. She's going to go on and be fine. It may be 10 million years before, I mean, there may be some disturbances and the unintended consequences and the destruction that we're bringing on ourselves. But they kind of have a view of life and the water of life being continuous, and that they're a big part of, that they play a humble part in it. Not, they're not, they don't consider themselves gods. They consider themselves human beings, and it really, it's kind of beautiful being human, huh?
Yeah, I think we've forgotten how to be human. I think that's one of our issues, actually. Yeah,
We're all trying to be gods rather than being humans,
Yeah.
And I'm
we're
saying
not
from the
clear.
West, I'm saying that our
Right.
idea of so I believe the cup though that we're part of, Catherine, is really for some people right now, the only thing they can see is the deficit situation we're in, and it's half empty, and it's all going to hell in a basket. And there's a whole lot of people in that category right now that are fearful and hold on. Let me let my dog out.
Sure.
It's a new thing. I have a dog now. My first dog.
Nice. Yeah, I've had dogs all my life, and I love them.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
This is my first
The
one.
one I've got now is 16.
Oh boy, mine's only 2 years old, and she had 7 pups, and I've really bonded with her, and wow, I'm just having a ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I'm at is that I feel like a shooting star after this widowmaker heart attack I had in December, following Mother Marie's passing in September of last year, and so I think that I'm really behind the idea of native science right now, of creating Earth-centric education that can resonate with children primarily,
Mm-hmm.
and then bring forth this hardwired sixth squiggling sense, which is a dynamic metastability that has constituted the 100 plus billion human souls that have taken the journey on planet Earth, and start celebrating that the real movement that's going on is this Unchimaka, this Mother Earth is she's a spectacular creation in the universe.
Yes.
And we have a lot of help in the unseen world and multiverse that we belong to. We're not the smartest ones on the block, And so, as the movie Don't Look Up pointed out, what we have come to discover about our surrounding world and ourselves is really spectacular. And we have a lot that could be born in this moment out of the unintended consequences and messes that we created. We're blaming God and the devil, and stopping the blame and shame game, and actually start owning that we've created this situation in history, and and we are the ones that can actually uh, solve it. No one else. So,
One of the things, and you were talking about agency earlier, which has been a theme here on the network. And I'm actually thinking about trying to get Jeremy Trent and Joe Brewer together to talk about autopoiesis and agency and how that works. We only have power when we understand our agency,
Mm.
and people shy away from the word responsibility because it equates in their minds with blame. And blame doesn't actually exist because the whole point of blame is to deflect agency onto somebody who doesn't have it. That's why they're blamed. But when you accept the responsibility and understand your agency, you can do things differently. I mean, geez, that's actually pretty exciting. Instead of being worried about all the things we didn't do or should have done or any of that kind of stuff, which is absolutely no reality. It's just all a fantasy in our own head. We can always make it different. That's the beauty of agency, is that you can always change it. Yeah.
now, what I learned from autopoiesis over the years is that I live in language,
Mm.
and that most of the patterns in language in the swept along drift, cultural drifts, is being utilized to describe or fight about or argue about what is reality. And what I would say, the deeper um, hardwired reality of autopoiesis is that we actually create reality in what we say. So this
Right.
thing of responsibility is really about becoming responsible for our voices and for
Mm.
our deliberate intentions in our interactive social relations with one another, you know. And and I think for that to begin to, that's what in Lakota, when they say "Wo Lakota," they're talking about, you know, you and I, Catherine and Mushin, having a covenant of peace and friendship and harmony in our interactive social relations, which occur in oral conversations. You know, we shouldn't have to have codified contracts as to, you know, uh, um, justify or to monitor our promises with one another. You know, we should be able to do it orally in this manner of War Lakota, you know, of being friends, of being uh, relations, you know, of belonging to the same species, right?
Right.
Um, and also at the same time a part of the web of life it carried for it. So this whole area of responsibility really comes down to not arguing or blaming and shaming each other over what's happened in the past, but really, you know, how is it that we are? What are the standards and the uh, practices that we are going to have in the present moment that are capable of, you know, creating a world together in the
Yep.
future that cares for
Yep.
children?
Yep.
And that takes some really conscious action. You know, it's not, you know, it gets you out of God and all the uh, spiritual warriors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's real human to human. It's about our humanness, you know. It's about something that we want to conserve in in our biology of love of drawing closer together with one another. Yeah, it's very fundamental.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
that's what you and I are trying to do today is to, you know, how do we I didn't come to this conversation because there was something I want from you. I came because it's an invitation that I accepted, and maybe there's some uh, interaction uh, that will serve. I don't know what, but I don't need to know what. You know, something you, you give yourself over to life. As
Yeah.
kind of a joyful concern, not a burden, and
Yes.
that's where we got
Yes.
to go. So
So why do you think they don't have a word for profanity?
I don't know, but I'm a I'm someone that um, I can really be profane sometimes with the situation that
Mm,
I feel I am in, and yet what I learned being around these gray eagles, these traditional people, is they just walk away. You know, it's like they don't have a context for uh, profanity. It's really quite interesting,
mm.
and
Say, say more about that. And they don't have a context for vanity.
profanity. In other
Oh,
words,
profanity.
they
Okay.
hold they hold their oral languaging, which is in Lakota. You know, one word in Lakota would take us an encyclopedia to try to explain. You know, so I'm just saying that they don't. Uh, yeah, they have a peacefulness in their language and a contentment. Uh,
Mm,
uh, you know, uh,
yeah.
all my relations to them just means everything to them.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
isn't. They're not separating parts. They the water, the air, the earth, um, and the fire are all a part of the web, and it's inside of everything, and so why would you want to break that? So their oral language is really kind of a very conservative language, intergenerationally. So their stories, their songs have been you know going on and on and on for thousands of years. And if you think
Yeah.
about that without you know having it perverted.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something, I saw this in the Aborigine as well, that they, and I do believe this is part of the shock of that indigenous people had when they met people from the West, is the uh, inability to really conceive of a human being as being untruthful, being against its own self. And that's just, why would you lie? Why would you distort? I mean, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And they just can't understand why a people would do that. And so it was just so profoundly, I think, confounding and just shocking that they still have not really figured out how to understand that aspect of Western humanity. And it makes it hard to work with them because you don't know what you're dealing with. You have no idea whether they're being truthful and honorable or not. And we have right now in this time almost made a joke of our ability to do that. It's almost become something that we laugh at ourselves or at those who would not understand it. Actually, I mean, why would you not do this? This is just, it's sort of, and they are not understanding the corruption that creates in your ability to engage with life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say is that in Western civilization, to tell the truth, uh, or this polarization, this this fundamental breakdown between creation and the creator has
Right.
created tremendous polarization, and it's everything is either or. You're either on this side or you're on that side. You're either on the side of light or you're on the side of darkness. You're either on the, you know, on the side of self or the collective. Yeah, everything is bifurcated now to the extremes.
Hmm.
And to tell the truth is, in terms of the hard mirroring plasticity in our adaptable central nervous system using coordination dynamics, is the inclusive middle that includes both sides. And I think the problem with being uh, in the inclusive middle is that both sides will hate you. That you won't have either side. Um, you know, for 50 years, my joke has been, and I'm a golfer, so I've been on a lot of great golf courses with, playing with a lot of men, and they always have jokes. And but my response for 50 years, when that's kind of where how I try to explain this, and I'd be on a tee box, and someone would say a joke, and I would say, "Oh, I'm not prejudiced. I hate everybody." And they would laugh at the situation, but I wouldn't hear another joke. I could go back to playing golf.
Right.
So where we are right now is in a I think we're in a very serious situation uh,
Yeah.
in terms of what is going on here in Ukraine, and it really brings up my appreciation for Eleanor Roosevelt
Yeah.
and how she showed up and created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights
Yep.
within the UN, and over the last 70 years, that's been translated into over 500 languages, and is part of the constitution of many countries now. And so the idea that we're going to fall back into uh, you know s- s- uh, Stalin actually rolling in with tanks and dominating a place is
Yeah.
not going to happen. And at the same time, you have the Western world that really needs to decide that we're going to you know uh, bring forward that vision of a universal declaration of human rights,
Yep.
maybe even expand it to the rights of all living uh, systems on the planet.
Yeah. There is a movement to do that.
Yeah.
Natural law. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
I
We
think
just,
that the indigenous people are, whether they're the Aboriginal people in Australia or all the tribes in America or Central America, South America, and on and on over to my homeland in both hidden Ireland and the German Celtic culture. That when you get down to uh, beyond the last 10,000 years, you know, to our root, to our primordial wisdom, we created language to draw closer together with one another, not to be arrogant and aggressive.
yeah.
And children know this. I think children know it, and I think that all of us have been deceived and betrayed in the educational processes that we've been indoctrinated with.
Yeah.
So there's really a grand opportunity of creating a new educational paradigm.
Right.
Some new conversations, as I think you would say, where there's opening new choices, in regards to what we commit ourselves to be and to do and how to act. And so it's kind of a great moment in one sense.
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of the movement that I've seen in education is really bringing kids back to earth and really connecting them to nature, to understanding how nature works and to being comfortable with nature and to honor their innate appreciation for nature. I mean, we all have that, I mean, we all understand beauty in the terms that nature's provided. There's not one of us that would look at a sunset and say, oh my God, we just don't do that. So there's something unanimous that flows through all of humanity that really resonates with nature. And we have spent centuries trying to pretend that's not true. And it is. It just is. Yeah. The pretense does not make it so.
Yeah, so maybe you can help me. What is your deliberate intention with your circle and conversations that you're creating? I mean, what is it that you're looking for from others in your
What I'm
storytelling or whatever?
Because we're in the situation we're in, the tendency in a lot of places is to turn around and look at what we're facing and then figure out how do we shift, how do we be different in a way that will allow us to go through this in the highest possible way, so that we really can reconnect, replenish the earth, quite literally, really understand how to thrive as a life system, all together, united as one. So it's very, and I think that's why the indigenous frameworks are coming up, because they're really the best models we have for that. And so my small role is to take people who really are sort of on the edge of that, but don't really understand what that would mean for them, to help them understand that, and then to be able to act from that place, to create the habits and patterns in their own life that make their actions consistent with this desire to regenerate life and the ability to live, because we've been so active at killing it. I mean, so many of our actions have really been death oriented, and we've not acknowledged that. Our running from death is death oriented. It's not life centric at all. And we're starting to see huge impacts of all the chemicals that we use to keep ourselves alive are creating death in other species. So it's really shifting that, and using our own senses of joy and beauty as truly pathways to begin to sense that when we're not feeling that, we're doing the wrong thing. That we can use our own bodies, our own experience to really center us in what is regenerative, what is life-giving, and have the discipline to follow that instead of poo-pooing it or accepting the prevailing wisdom that you don't do things like that. So it's having conversations, a lot of conversations, really, where people can really talk about it and begin to see where agency really comes from, and I think agency comes from a joy of living and from beauty. When you're in those spaces, you resonate, and everything seems possible. And you're willing to act, you're willing to go forward. When we look at the desolation and the destruction, it's really demoralizing. It's death enhancing, it's not life enhancing. So we need to begin to recognize that and to clear our own minds. And we do that through language, as you said, through talking and discussion. We clarify what we think. We begin in interactions with others, begin to see the little gaps in our understanding that we still have, so we can clean those up and be more coherent.
Mhm. Right.
So I'm really grateful that you took the time to be here. And I know you're going through a lot in your own life. So I'm doubly grateful that you took the
Ah,
space.
yeah, well, I'm kind of excited about the changes that are going on in my life and slowing down and finding more silence and stillness and
Oh, stillness and listening. Oh my gosh, how important those are. We wonder why we don't know. And it's because we have so much stuff going on. We can't hear the voices that are there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, and just becoming grateful and appreciative for uh, golly, for just having another breath right now for me is really wonderful and you know, coming back and being here with my daughter, who's just
Yeah.
been the sunshine of my life.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, she thinks I walk on water, and
Isn't it wonderful?
then I have a son who knows better. It's, it's kind of like my uh, yeah, my son keeps me straight. So um, you know, I mean, it's a really wonderful life that we are sharing and bearing together, and beyond all the agony and ecstasy, you know, there's you know, if we could just look up and see where we really are, rather than all these old stories, you know. It's like the old stories in modernity have just created a complete rotten wall, you know. You really can't even put fresh paint on it right now because you wouldn't be able to see it. So, you know, how do we start creating a new blank canvas
Yep.
as humanity where we become very responsible for what we put on the canvas?
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the response, the way you know it's been done right is the feeling of joy and satisfaction that you get when it's done right.
Yeah.
So just really honoring those spaces and really working to have those experiences. It's a good thing. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Well, I promise to keep you in my prayers, Catherine, and your circle, and pray that the we that you're pointing to is a wisdom, you know, not a singular, just
Right.
individual wisdom, but a collective, intelligent wisdom that is, you know, that we start to gather. That's really hardwired in us, you know.
Yep.
I don't know if you need to even teach it. I mean, I think it's there. We've just misplaced our attention in
Yeah.
regards to who we are. You know,
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And together we can remind each other of that, which is why
exactly.
we're together.
So I've really appreciated talking to you today and being reminded.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And it's just great to see you. It really is.
Yeah.
Really is. I'll keep you in my prayers as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
let all of our friends, you know, I never get to that morning.
Yeah.
Uh,
Humanity Rising.
yeah,
Yeah. I had a friend of mine on there yesterday, and she's just a marvel. Her organization is American Resilience, and she's a climate scientist. Well, she's actually a botanist, but she's doing climate science. And she's doing all this research that says here in this place, in the next 30 years, you can expect these changes. So if you used to raise oranges, maybe now you're going to do some other fruit. So have at it. Look at that as a positive thing. Don't worry about it. Just move with the flow. It's going to get warmer. So now you want to plant this. because what you used to plant's not going to go anymore. And she's so joyful about it. She's just wonderful. So she was on yesterday. That was really it was really fun. I'm on her board, so I'm going to bring her to the network too. She'll be talking in a couple of months.
So I know
Yeah.
someone that has the same name, American Resilience. I think his name is Sorkin, but he's a military guy that's done
Oh,
short 40-minute films, very powerful stuff. Check it out. I think
okay, yeah,
it's Sorkin, but it's the same thing. It's called American Resilience.
interesting.
He's in Washington D.C.
Okay, no, she's in. I forget where she's living. She's out of Indiana, but she's not there right now. I think she's in California.
This guy
But
makes movies. He's a producer.
okay,
He's
yeah,
a military guy that was in media in the service and then came out, and but his films are very, very powerful in regards to uh, yeah, what's going on in climate change and how to end war. And
well, you're a member of the network now, so you can come back anytime.
okay, all right. All right. Well, you have a good night, and it's good talking
You
to you.
too. Okay, thank you so much, Mushin.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.